Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
Spooky Thanksgiving.
It's the spookiest Thanksgiving yet.
Ooh, hi everybody.
Spooky turkey. A spooky, right? No, that doesn't work. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
A sporky?
My name is Sporky. My name is David Bell.
My name is Tom Ryman.
And we just watched The Fall of the House of Usher.
I got really excited, like the fall. Outerwear and pumpkin spice of the house. A little less of Usher. Oh, Usher's house?
Usher? He was fine in the faculty.
Usher? The faculty's Usher?
Roderick Usher, your family is a collection of stunted hearts whose time has come. Who are you? Consequence. And tonight is consequential.
No, Usher's great.
Yeah, we love Usher.
We love Usher.
Do we love Usher?
I think so. I think he's fine.
I'm not
I don't think he's done anything.
Okay, yeah, I haven't looked that up. I don't actually know much about Usher. Hi, folks.
Just singing and dancing, man. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, we are. Man, we have done almost all the Michael Flanagans.
We have. So we sort of felt like we couldn't let the latest Mike Flanagan Netflix series, Fall the House of Usher, pass us by without covering it, because we've covered most of the other ones. If not, we didn't cover the Midnight Club.
I still haven't seen the Midnight Club.
Me either. That one's real divisive. But
yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
Anyway, we're covering the newest one as a special little treat for one of the holiday slots.
Exactly. We're taking we're taking Thanksgiving off. We figured, let's just.
We're not monsters. We're not made of stone.
Exactly. And
we need to take time off to eat our sporkies, Dave.
How could we say no to a series with Krychek in it?
That is very extremely true.
Yeah. Did y'all notice that?
Did you guys notice Alex
Nicholas
Krychek?
Lee? Yeah, with a mustache.
The duplicitous agent Alex Krychek. Yeah, he's the judge. He's the judge in the ongoing trial.
You pointed that out to me, and I gone through the first episode like I didn't see Krychek in there. And then once you notice him, you're like, that is so obviously Krychek. Wow, he really is a master of disguise.
Right.
He really is like
maybe he's a better,
really good spy.
Maybe he's a better spy than we gave him credit for.
Right.
Oh,
it's
maybe
just
that's
him with a mustache. It's just Krychek with a mustache.
It's just Krychek with a silver fox mustache. That's it.
Yeah.
And like,
Play the judge.
I guess that works because like, he's terrible at he's a terrible assassin, but I guess maybe his spy skills were never really in question.
Do you think he was cast just because it's Krychek? Like, do you think?
I'm sure that didn't hurt.
Yeah, if I were Mike Flanagan, I would cast Krychek all the time in things. I'm hoping he'll be a regular in Mike Flanagan stuff.
He's Annabeth Gish, who played Reyes on X-Files, is already a regular, and they have an X-Files poster hanging up in one of the characters' rooms at midnight mass. So,
oh yeah, I mean he collects actors.
He does.
Because...
He's like Katamari Damacy of filmmakers.
Right, exactly, and that only speaks to the fact that I assume he's actors love him. And
they seem to.
You can sort of see why. It's just like, okay, you're going to play, you're going to be in this like cool gothic thing that everybody loves. That also has a lot of heart. Also, you're going to get at least one monologue.
You're going to get at least one fucking meaty ass monologue.
Yeah. And you're going to play like a really interesting character.
Yeah.
Like almost all of his
Operatic.
characters are fascinating. Yeah. He doesn't have like, just he's so good at that. He's so good at characters.
Mm-hmm. He really is, yeah.
I don't know if people...
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, if people hadn't listened to our previous ones, they might know we love Mike Flanagan.
We love Mike Flanagan here. Like we love Usher. We love Mike Flanagan.
Yeah, exactly. Were you going to ask how I liked this series?
I was, yeah, because we haven't actually said that.
Oh, I fucking loved it.
Yeah,
It was
I thought
great.
it was great. Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's my favorite, but I did really like the way it was written. And
Yeah,
I love how mostly nasty it is, which is a big departure for Flanagan. It still has all of the heart that you'd expect. Like, it still like has the deep meditations, but like it's more simple. It's a more simplistic story than his previous series have been, and it's just about a bunch of shitty people getting their comeuppance.
Yeah, so I haven't seen The Midnight Club, and again, that seems to be something people regard as not great.
Less good?
Again, I
don't know.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. So saying that, the thing with Mike Flanagan is they're all, and I know other people have more varying opinions. I'm actually boring in this regard. They're all kind of A+ for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they all make me feel something, and they're all so well done. Mike Flanagan just gets me.
Yeah, he does.
And a lot of people. I always
clearly,
talk about him as like, he's what I think James Wan is for other people, which is like, he's really good at just like solid, like haunted house horror.
Sort of. I get what you're saying, but I would classify.
Oh, sorry. I mean, like, visually, his stories are a lot more robust than James Wan's.
Oh yeah, that's what I was.
Like,
I was gonna call, like, I was trying to think of a clever, like, Walden Books era analogy, like James Wan would be the Goosebumps book, and then the Mike Flanagan would be like the quote unquote adult book that you were really excited to read.
Right, and it's nothing against James Wan. What I'm talking
not at
about
all.
is
He goes more for fun. And
I'm talking about,
he has different sensibilities, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm talking about like horror that's more like, oh, we'll have a jump scare or two in there. We're not like, but
we're not. Yeah, again, we're not made of stone. We're gonna throw a cat in there.
And that isn't like Mike Flanagan. I it's weird to say, like, he's not like middle of the road. He's making exceptional work.
He is
in terms of writing. I'm just talking about his like directing style of horror.
Yeah.
Although even that, like the fact that he slips in so many subliminal ideas, and this is
he lets images breathe a lot, which he does still do the jump scares, obviously, and apparently the Midnight Club has a just insane amount of them. But in this and in his previous ones, but in Usher, which we're talking about, he really lets scenes and images breathe. Which is, he's got a lot of modern horror sensibilities, but that's the biggest one that's like mostly at odds with modern horror. Modern popular horror, excuse me.
Yeah, this is all to say that every one of his series, I'm not going to count his movies just because it gets too complicated.
Right.
Are like A+ for me. So this is one of my least favorite of his series. That means nothing because they're all great.
Right.
That's all to say. It's like they're all in the top notch.
Right.
This one is like,
there's less. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just like, this. I think it's what you're about to say. There's less of an emotional component in this,
right?
On purpose.
There's less meat on the bone. Not that there's none, because what this ultimately becomes is, I mean, all of his series are about death. I mean, at least the grown-up ones that we've seen. We haven't seen Midnight Club again,
right?
But like Bly Manor, Hill House, and Midnight Mass, they're all about death. And how we face death, how we think about death, how we coexist with death. So what this show does have is a pretty profound meditation on people's obsession with their own mortality and trying to establish some sort of legacy. And then, of course, the show plays with kind of what that means in more simplistic ideas. But what I really loved about it, and what was actually pretty poignant, is how a lot of the characters think about, I mean, because it's Poe, and that's intertwined perfectly with the works of Poe. We haven't mentioned that yet, but like, the show, if you're not familiar with the works of Edgar Allan Poe, the title is a direct reference to an Edgar Allan Poe story, but the series as a whole incorporates elements and plot lines from a bunch of different Poe stories and poems.
The House of Usher part, the only thing is really the book ending. It's the burying alive. That's the element that's House of Usher, if I recall.
Yeah,
and
that's
someone coming back to attack someone after being buried alive.
It's his sister, yeah. It's the same thing.
And mother and sister, yeah.
He's sitting there talking to him. Anyway,
yes, it's the narrator talking to a guy, yeah.
Anyway, the what I was getting to is the show's meditation on death is really profound in a lot of moments. The best way to articulate it, because I'm kind of having trouble wrapping my mind around phrasing the idea that's in my mind, but the decision to cast Death, the character of Death, is played by Carla Gugino, as a moral character. She's very, very moral. She still has to do her duty because it's death, but the show really is about coming to terms with death, meeting death on your term. It's a lot to do with coming to grips with your own mortality and recognizing that death is frightening, but it's not necessarily scary or evil or mean. It's just it's a thing. It's a natural malice. Order. Yeah, it's a part of the balance, and she actually is this moral character, which is an interesting decision to. It's not just a great performance because she's awesome in this as she is and everything, but it's also an interesting decision to depict death that way in terms of the writing and how she's written. It's really good.
It's like you said, it's like she has a job to do. And she has a varying opinion on the people she has to do the job to, and but no matter what, they have to die. So
end result is the same, regardless of how she feels about them. Yeah,
yeah. Obviously, spoilers. So there's the way they die. He links the cruelty of the death though with her opinion. Which of course is weird.
Her estimation of them or her judgment of them. And it's also linked to, they seem to be linked to their own cruelties or shortcomings in some way, right?
Right, which of course is it's a moral tale where it's the world isn't actually like that, right? You could die a horrible death and be a good person, but that's how they're linking it here. So the Pit and the Pendulum one, it's a character who is just terrible, and she's enjoying it. She's you're getting what's coming to you.
It's funny. It's Henry Thomas, little Elliot for me too.
Elliot.
But
playing, I love that he got this role because he keeps Henry Thomas has been in a lot of the Mike Flanagan stuff.
I think all the series, a couple of the movies,
yeah. He usually gives them these characters that have an amount of reverence, like you're a priest or you're the flashback.
They're very
of the dad.
fatherly, or they're good. They're usually good.
Yeah,
characters heroic characters.
He's like a little scumbag in this, and he's completely
such
different.
A fucking little douche in this. He's great, and then he loses his mind. But he's fucking out of his mind on coke and accidentally snorts an opiate that paralyzes him by mistake, and he is paralyzed as the pendulum swings and cuts him in half. And it's related to what he has done for the entire show is he's been doing kind of the same thing to his wife, who was horribly injured in another one of the death accidents, the Final Destination accidents that sort of happened. Right. But because she's not an usher, she lived. I guess we'll have to explain that part of it. I mean, maybe. But it's because he kept her paralyzed and was tormenting her. He pulls all of her teeth out. Because he found out she was going to cheat on him or something. Yeah. With his brother. It was a whole thing. But anyway.
Apparently his character is based off the main character in a different Poe story, Metzengerstein.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Right. Yeah, apparently it has to do with a guy who's obsessed with a horse and keeps riding it until it becomes his downfall. Horse being, I assume, just... it's about a man who becomes obsessed.
Yeah.
And that's what happens to him. He becomes addicted to cocaine and becomes obsessed with this whole thing.
The
with
idea that his wife was unfaithful.
Yeah.
And it's
so
she wasn't. She went to his younger brother's like weird sex party, but was like weirded out.
Yeah, she had a moment of weakness, and then she veered back.
Yeah,
and like even if she was unfaithful, his reaction is an overreaction.
Of course, he's a maniac. He completely loses his mind. That's another element that I really liked about this series. Because it is, it's a Mike Flanagan show. So, and we've talked a lot about the Mike Flanagan-ness of it all, but it's very much an Edgar Allan Poe show. Like it's really based heavily in his like melancholy themes. Although this show is much more hopeful, although it is very sad, but it still has sort of like a positive, like, well, death's a part of life. Like the pursuit, you'll end up ruining yourself in the pursuit of a legacy. Your legacy shouldn't be a monument you build to yourself. It should be like your family and your children, and like the love that you share with people. That's like, it's like I said, it's very simple, but like the Poe aspect of it, there's a repeated idea in Poe stories is a slow revelation that the narrator has been out of their fucking mind the entire time, and you just didn't realize it. And he does that a few times with a few characters in this so fucking well.
He does.
It's done so well that he does it more than once, and I didn't notice it. Like the ultimate reveal that Bruce Greenwood, who plays Roderick Usher, the main Usher, has been fucking brutally insane the whole time, was such a good reveal, and it was handled so well.
Yeah, for sure.
Because he's treated the whole show as almost this tragic figure where you're like, he was gonna be a good person, and then he stumbled, and then he fell into this life of badness, and then the reveal is, no, he was always gonna be a bad person. It's all he ever wanted to be.
Right.
And then he's just totally insane and mummifies his sister at the end.
You get that vibe a little bit, only because they keep showing these flashbacks, and you're like, they killed someone. Like they clearly killed someone.
You know he killed someone, and if you're
there is, yes, you're right. Okay, you are right about this, because they killed someone, and I knew who they killed, because it's very clear that it's going to be the creep guy. But he's such a creep to his sister that I thought, like, oh, did he like throw himself on her, and like they accidentally killed him, or like, was it the thing where it was like self-defense, and then you learn how they killed him, and you're like, oh no, they just killed him in cold blood.
Oh yeah. It's if you know Poe,
it's another Poe story.
It's a Poe story. It's a famous one. It's the Cask of Amontillado. So if a lot of people read this story in school, so like odds are a lot of people caught this. But it's related to like a thing that Flanagan does a lot, which is, this is a criticism of mine. It's a very slight one, but he does this in pretty much every one of his shows that I've watched, is he'll have some image that represents a dead person that's directly linked to the main character's guilt, and they will continue to see this person throughout the first half of the series. Yeah. He's done that in every single show.
Yeah, when he saw the little gesture at the beginning, I was like, that was weird and inappropriate, because you start watching it, and then when you realize they came from a costume party, I'm like, oh, I know what costume the guy is wearing.
Yeah,
like that,
well, as soon as you see the gesture, you know what. If you know the story, you know what the crime is. Like, oh, they bricked a motherfucker up in a wall.
Yeah, exactly. There's a bit of like, this isn't a criticism, but it's why I think this is his more fun leaning one, and not as. I'm going to say it's not as meaningful.
No,
and I think part of it is because
more
this is
for sure. Sorry.
Yeah, this is Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but with Poe, meaning that like I'm looking it all up, like Arthur Pym, Mark Hamill's character is, his entire backstory is another
Arthur
Poe
Gordon
story.
Pym. Yeah.
Yeah, all of the characters are based. They're all named after Poe, and all their backstories are Poe stories. So that's all to say that like Flanagan is doing a really good job weaving these ideas together, but he is locked into the ideas. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Where it's like they still have to have these elements, and so it does create a thing where you're like, I'm sitting there and I'm trying to like parse out like what does it all mean? What does this mean? Why is Pym like this? And then you realize like, oh, because it's the story. That's it. it's because it's in the story. And so like there's a lot less, he has less control over the narrative because his idea is to adapt everything that's Poe into this one thing. And that's not really a critique. It's just why he, I think, is more limited in when he wrote this and why it's just more, we're having fun. You know,
I think that's part of it. I think that's part of it. I think the bigger thing is that the cast is almost entirely villains.
Yeah, none of them are likable. You realize, oh, I'm rooting for Death. I didn't mind that because it felt to me like a slasher.
Right,
like,
and it's much
built
more
like a slasher where like every episode you know someone's gonna die.
It's also kind of a meta reference, right? Because like Hamer and Vincent Price and shit did a lot of those old Edgar Allan Poe like schlock horror films, and this feels a little Hamerish, right? It feels a little schlocky with some of the how over the top the violence is, and like the decadence. Like there's a lot of nudity in this, which isn't normally a thing in Flanagan stuff.
He'll have some, yeah.
He'll have some, but not as much as in this. This is the most R-rated I think he's been in his shows.
It's kind of his biggest strength as a horror director, and this is very rare, I think, for horror directors specifically. And what I'm getting at is like Sam Raimi.
Restraint?
What?
I was going to say, is it his restraint?
No, it's so you watch a Sam Raimi film and you know it's a Sam Raimi film, right?
Yeah.
Even like The Gift feels like a Sam Raimi film, even though it's not about demons, it's like a haunting. And even the haunting is over the top Sam Raimi style shots. Mike Flanagan is very good at like matching the tone of the writing. I think there's still an element of like, you know, you're watching a Mike Flanagan film. If they have a long monologue, the way it's shot, so on and so forth. But what we're talking about is like the level of gore, how silly, how over the top it is. You watch Ouija and you're like, this feels like he got the assignment. You know, Ouija 2. He's like, make like a PG-13-ish horror that's still scary but dials it back. You know what I mean? Like he always kind of like Hush. It's like make a slasher that's more of like a tension home invasion.
Exactly.
And that's what it feels like. And so it's like, you know, Hush shouldn't have like over the top gore. Like it's about this.
Yeah. He's not afraid of restraint.
He's not afraid of restraint. He's not afraid of sort of kind of being a chameleon a little bit.
Right.
You know, Dr. Sleep feels like, yeah, this is what the Shining sequel would be, you know?
Yeah. It's less visually identifiable, not in a bad way at all.
Yeah, and I think he knew like right away, like we're not rooting for anyone in this movie or show. We're rooting for like a couple side characters.
Yeah, and you
he
do
does
have
a good
some of the
with that.
Yeah, for sure. I think like Mark Hamill has one of my favorite scenes with Death when she sits him down, and Mark Hamill plays this guy that we already mentioned, Arthur Gordon Pym, who's basically been the fixer for the Usher family for his whole life. And he has a mysterious backstory where he did this worldwide globe-trotting expedition. But other than that, we really don't know anything about him except he's the most terrifying man who's ever lived, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
And he has this wonderful scene with Death where he shows up because they think she's just some run-of-the-mill murderer. So he shows up to kill her and is wrapping her body up. And then, of course, she's not dead because she's eternal. And she sits him down and they have this conversation where she like is like, yeah, I know you. I came up and watched your expedition and you saw me out there on the ice, didn't you? And he's like so haunted, but also but also like entranced by her. It's both he's haunted and also like in reverence of her.
Yeah, because he's a man who's been around a lot of death.
He's lived in service of death his whole life. Yeah. And she offers him a deal, which we should, real quick, the whole point of the story is she shows up after the Roderick and Madeline Usher, the two primary Ushers, murder a guy to take over the company. And she's like, I'll make you a deal. I will guarantee it that you have unlimited success and will never be found guilty or arrested for any crime that you commit for your entire lives. However, you and your entire bloodline will die at the moment when you were naturally going to die. And they take the deal. She more or less... She's
the Wishmaster.
She's a Wishmaster, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny that Death is also like, I dabble as Wishmaster as well.
Well,
That's
it makes
like my side gig.
sense when... As the the show plays out, but also like death coming up to make a wager or a bargain is a pretty familiar story across
100%.
centuries of
makes me
folklore and literature and
powers, stuff. Because I'm like, how can she make it so that they don't get arrested? Because like, can all death do is kill? It's just funny that like, you're right, that death, this is a common trope for death, but that trope is always funny to me, that it's like death is death, also a genie. And it's like, that seems like a hat on a hat. Like, too many jobs for death. Just focus on
genie
death.
Powers. But yeah, she offers him kind of a similar deal where she's like, they're going to go, listen, they're going down. They're all going to die eventually. And everybody at Fortunato, the company that they work at, which is another Poe reference, the Cask of Amontillado. She's like, everything in that company's going down and you're going to get pretty much hung out to dry probably. So I can offer you the same deal where you will skate by, but you're going to have to give me something in return. And he has this, he's almost like in tears where he turns down her offer and he's like, I can't. He's like, I've lived almost 80 years without anyone having any leverage over me. I refuse to be leveraged.
He's also like, like, that's a better deal for a young person, you know? Because old people are like, nah.
But also, he kind of he ends his rejection by essentially saying, "I'll take you. I appreciate your generous offer. Thank you so much for speaking to me. Like it clearly means a lot to him to be able to just speak with her. But he's like, I'll take my chances." And she kind of like respects him for it. And it's like a weirdly kind of great scene. It's one of my favorite scenes.
Well, I think it's because it's weird because the Pym character is he's objectively a bad person.
He's a bad person, but there's nothing to him. He's empty.
Exactly. He's like an animal.
Yeah, he has no personality really.
Right. And there's this element of like, it's sort of like, I know you haven't watched much Succession. There's an element in that movie, in that show, where you slowly, as you see the other people of the family, Brian Cox becomes like the only person you have a little bit of respect for. And it's not because he's a good guy. He's a horrible guy. It's just that he understands people and he's good at his job. And like, that's what Pym is, where it's like, he's terrible, but he seems to have like, not morals, but rules. And he goes by his rules and you're like, oh, okay. You know where you stand with him.
Yeah.
It's like Tony Soprano's another character like that, where you slowly realize like, okay, you just have to follow his rules. And so like he ends up being like not a character you like, but a character that you just, it's like he's somehow less despicable.
You have a weird amount of respect for him, if for no other reason than he turns down Death's offer. Meanwhile, Roderick, we eventually see it's another component of the slow revelation that our main character, Roderick, is actually a piece of shit who's also out of his mind. We see that he accepts Death's offer almost instantly, barely without thinking about
Exactly. He's like, yeah, fuck the kids. Yeah. So this is a big element of, I think, what this story is about. And it feels very Mike Flanagan to do.
Definitely,
and it also involves
about powerful men, and yeah, for sure.
Well, it's about trading the future for immediate gains.
Yeah.
Right? It's about how the fact that an entire generation made a deal similar to this with death, which is basically, you're going to trade in the lives of future generations for money now. That is what we're dealing with, the fallout of.
Unlimited money now. Yeah, I mean, the Usher family is pretty transparently whatever the family behind Oxy.
They're
Percocet.
a pharmaceutical company. They have the scene where it's raining bodies, where Death is like, I can barely compete with you. You know, like,
this is your legacy.
Yeah,
that's a pretty dope scene with all the bodies raining down.
I think it would have been too on the nose if they were like an oil company, but that, I think, is the feeling, right? I mean, pharmaceuticals is another good example of that. Is they wanted money now,
it's just as bad,
and in exchange, tons of people dying.
Just as insidious, and I think it matched more with. First, I mean, not. First, I just would, of course, yeah, absolutely. This is completely applicable as a climate change. It's a lot of things.
It's a lot of
things. It just seems like I feel like he maybe chose pharmaceuticals because obviously both are extremely topical and relevant, but one of them is about causing more direct harm to human beings, which I think feeds the theme of his story.
I would also argue that, and I don't know if this is why he did it, but pharmaceuticals is for some reason less political, meaning that like everybody kind of is like, yeah, fuck them. Like no one is going to bat. Like I'm sure they're lobbying some senators, but like the general public, like there's no like general public who are like, no, actually what they did is good. Like that doesn't seem like a political thing. Speaking of which, there was only one line that I hated in this. Can you guess which?
No.
It was the Trump reference.
Oh, in that scene that I was just describing.
Yep. That was a big eye roll for me, and I'll tell you why. Because
that's pretty sweaty. Yeah.
So she's basically the genie in the X-Files. Do you remember the X-Files genie episode where you realize that the genie is...
Do I remember the genie episode? That was a question for them. That was a question for them.
Yeah. Mulder meets a genie. Don't ask too many questions.
Boy, does he.
And they do this thing where they look at old pictures and realize like, oh, there she is with Nixon. There she is with Hitler. It's the idea of like everybody who she crosses paths with gets like a tremendous power and then a downfall.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of the idea of this death character too. And they show her in like old pictures of historical people, and then she mentions like, my last client, I said you could shoot someone on fucking Fifth Avenue and get away with it, or whatever the quote was. And that made me go boo for a couple reasons. One, it's like, I know he wanted to like get a little nudge like, Trump, get it?
Sure.
But also like, I don't think Trump's that powerful. That's kind of the problem, is like they're mythologizing Trump by doing that.
Powerful. If you remember, the terms of her deal is that they would never be found guilty for any of their crimes, and Trump's most famous nickname is Teflon Don.
Yes, I know that. I know why he did it. I just didn't think like, one, it's like we're still in this.
We're still in this. Yeah, I groaned as well.
Right. If she mentioned like Nixon or someone who famously, like OJ, I guess, I don't know, someone who famously got away with something that is in the past, it would have been better. Trump, it's like, well, we're still in the middle of it, and it feels like it's just like, come on, man, we'll see, right? Let's have some hope. And also, it like the idea of Trump having like a deal with death is just like, he's not that special. He's not special enough for that in my head. Yeah, like it's that also.
Yeah. For sure.
I get the idea.
I groaned at that for sure.
Yeah, I get the idea that Roderick is not special either.
Right.
But it was weird because he's Bruce Greenwood, and I'm like, Trump isn't Bruce Greenwood to me.
Not by a fucking mile.
Yeah. He's not devious enough to brick someone up. Like, he's not that kind of evil. So like, to throw him into it, like, he's more of the dumb, ignorant type of evil.
For sure.
And if Bruce Greenwood was depicted that way, and I know he's kind of that, but they make him a lot more devious. You know, they kind of, it's that thing where like when a serial killer is depicted as Hannibal Lecter, when you're like, no, they're usually dummies. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like this version of evil rich guy, I think, is sort of a mythology of how evil rich guys actually are, you know?
No, for sure.
I
think the connection was more about, in the past, people who sacrificed many. It was about people who were undone by their own ambition. Was the connection there, really? So it's like, I don't know if OJ would have been the right connection to me.
OJ wouldn't have been the right connection at all. But you know what I mean? Where it's like the Trump, it felt like a Thanos. You know?
I was like, the old picture stuff, I was with it because I understood like, oh, that's what he's going. It's less like she's been in the ear of every evil person, and it was more, these are all people who were fucking victims to their own ambition and also victimized the rest of the world for their own ambition. So I was fine with it, with all that. But yeah, the Trump line, I was like, we could have cut this. We didn't need it. It felt really out of place in the story. It was just like,
it did, because the story also feels both
a little relevant out of time
and out of time. Yes, it's a little timeless.
Yeah,
I think it's just because it's all like kind of fictional. this fictional family. Like pharmaceuticals are not out of time,
No.
and they're using like modern phones and stuff like that. But it
right, and the flashbacks are clearly like the 70s or the 80s rather.
But Flanagan in general always feels out of time.
A little bit, because he goes for these big like we were saying, these operatic kind of emotional sort of ideas that are more tend to be timeless because they're
the way people talk is a lot more out of time. Like their points of references, stuff like that. Like the type of
I think that's what it is, because
he gothic horror. He
normally avoids like real pop culture references, like real loud ones.
Right, which doesn't mean there isn't any.
Right, it just it's just why like the Trump thing stuck. Like when Leo the Black Cat storyline, when he's smashing his walls with the Thor hammer, he's like, I'll just have Hemsworth send me another one. That was fine. Like that landed with, because like the scene was kind of like dementedly humorous. Like, so it worked there. It's the Trump line in the middle of the scene between Pym and Death just felt, I don't know.
Yeah.
Felt real glaring.
Yes. There's a meta aspect I realized to why I enjoyed this, because part of it is also like they're all Flanagan actors who normally don't play pieces of shit, and they're all playing pieces of shit.
Yep.
And that was fun as hell to watch, because they enjoyed it too. Because that actor, he was the sheriff in fucking Midnight Mass.
Yes.
He was in Blind Manor, and he's fucking terrific. And it was so great to watch him play just like such a piece of shit.
Raul Coley. My mind was blanking on his name.
Oh yeah, I'm terrible with names.
Yeah.
And then the fact that you see the title of each episode, and if you know any Poe, you're like, oh, I know how this is going to end for them, or the ballpark, which of course, Rue Morgue, when you hear that, you're like, hell yes!
Well, it's funny, watching the first episode, it took me like 3/4 of it, because they reveal that one of the ushers is doing clinical trials of this artificial heart pump, and they're testing them on chimpanzees, so I'm just kind of watching. And I didn't click until they revealed that the hospital's nickname is Rue Morgue. I'm like, oh, they dangled the monkey right in front of me. Oh, shit. Yeah. They're doing the monkey.
And they do it as the 3rd episode. And I was like, that's how you do it.
They get it out of the way real quick. Yeah.
Yeah. In that theme, what was your favorite like episode adaptation? So the episodes are there's a bookend one, which is A Midnight Jury in the Raven. That's the big one, the heavy hitter. There's the Red Death, Rue Morgue, Black Cat, Telltale Heart, Goldbug, Pit and the Pendulum.
Man,
it's hard because you can judge it by a few things. Like Pit and the Pendulum, I thought was the weirdly like this doesn't mean I didn't like it, but I thought it was the loosest adaptation. Because if you remember, the pendulum in that story, if I recall, it's how it begins, but the person doesn't actually die from the pendulum. He
gets out.
Yeah, they get out and they go in the pit.
They're in the pit.
Oh, they're in the pit, but they don't. They get the pendulum's up. Walls crush them. They get crushed.
I can't remember. I remember the story begins with them at the bottom of the pit, and they can slowly kind of see the pendulum descending into view.
Yeah. But I don't think they actually get got by the pendulum. And in this, he had to think of a really sweaty way to create a pendulum. I didn't think it was terrible, though. I think that's the episode that begins with the cat clock and that tail swinging, and you're just like, oh, yeah. Like, I think there's a lot of pendulum visuals.
There are throughout.
I don't remember Goldbug enough.
Goldbug is with Tammy Tamerlane, who is Samantha Sloyan, I think is the actress's name.
Right. I don't remember the original. I mean, the story.
Oh, Goldbug? I have no idea. She is launching her own Goop style product line, which she has a meltdown during the launch, which is incredible. She throws the mic stand at her stepmother,
slams her in the head.
Who is younger than I loved the stepmom.
She's great.
She's just this Irish. Actress? I'm not sure. I've not seen her in it. I think she's in Midnight Club, but she's Irish and she's like younger than any of the kids, so she's already feels like out of place, and they're all really shitty to her, and she's just trying to be nice. So like at the scene where Death is like taunting Tammy as she's on stage. So she throws her microphone stand at who she thinks is Carla Gugino, and it just hits this lady right in the face.
It's so good.
It's just like it may not sound as funny, but when it happens, it's just like the most recent injustice. Like here's another humiliation you guys have visited upon her. Juno is the character's name, I think.
Right.
Here's another humiliation for Juno. And she's just trying to be pleasant to people.
Right.
Oh man.
Oh wow. Sorry, I just looked her up. That's amazing. She got her start during the COVID. She was a barber. She lost her job in the pandemic and just became a TikTok star, making like comedic videos.
Oh, good
and
for
then
her.
just got discovered. Yeah, that's amazing. I didn't think that was actually possible. Good for her.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. But the Telltale Heart, I liked. I liked that. I liked the weird
I really liked
heart
it.
mesh thing.
Yeah, and how that was the other one where the reveal is that the protagonist or the character you've been following is cracked. We already sort of
so good. She's
right.
That actress is fucking amazing.
I don't remember her name. I know she's in Bly Manor. She was
she's great in that.
Yeah, where she's like dead the whole time. I'm sorry, I didn't spoil it. I don't think she's in Midnight Mass, but
I don't know, but we're going to see more and more of her.
Yeah.
And
She's great in this.
Yeah, and I liked that take.
Yeah, the take on it was pretty cool. They do the story. She's hearing the heartbeat the whole time.
Right.
It's the person
and
they've
instead
killed.
in this, they do a version of you kind of know, like, I don't know about you, but I knew the moment they cut away after she throws the thing, I'm like, oh, she killed her.
Oh yeah.
and then you hear the clicking and you're like, oh, it's the Telltale Heart. But again, this show isn't trying to surprise. I don't think.
No.
For me, the satisfaction was like, ooh, that's a really, like, how am I going to adapt this?
It was more seeing how they would integrate things. Because he's not, if you're familiar, like I said, if you know anything, well, I don't want to say it in a condescending way, but like if you've read the Cask of Amontillado, which is one of his most famous stories, you immediately, like, he tells you immediately what the Usher's crime was, and he doesn't really, it doesn't like officially reveal it all the way until the last episode. So I think it's less about, he's never really been about mystery boxes or things. It's more about like,
it's part of what I love about him is that Flanagan,
like additional context will be revealed most of the time, but anyway, it's
Flanagan. So here's the thing: what a huge thing about Flanagan, huge thing I love about him as a writer, is the mystery box was one of the worst things to happen because it used to be that plot twists weren't things that movies kept going like, did you guess the plot twist yet? What's the plot twist? What's it going to be? Like when you watch Fight Club,
the reason it's called a twist is because you don't see it coming.
Exactly. So like, I'm not going to name any of his series, but he has plot twists sometimes. And usually he at least has something unexpected happen. And you don't see it coming because he doesn't spend the whole time going like, what's that? What's that going to be? What's this thing? He will have like what's in this room? Like there's literally a mystery box in The Haunting of Hill House, but it's not like, he's not loud about it, and it doesn't like encompass the entire thing, you know? And the answer is usually satisfying.
Right. It's just another thread in the storyline to follow.
Yeah, but he's just such a good writer that
the biggest ones are like just the thread of the story.
Right. It's not that he doesn't have twists and it doesn't have mystery boxes.
Of course.
It's that he doesn't rest everything on those narrative devices.
Yeah. Like
he doesn't
obviously obviously Hill House builds towards what happened that night when the family all got out of the house, and we don't see that until the last episode, but like there's so much else going on too.
Here's how I'd put it is you could define it as that he doesn't have mystery boxes, because what a mystery box is by the inventor J.J. Abrams is based off a literal box that you could get at a magic store that was a mystery box. As a kid, you could go to this magic store and buy this box, and the box basically you'd pay $15 and you'd get whatever's in the box. And he talked about how what was so cool to him about the mystery box was that it wasn't about what's in the box. It was about wondering what it was going to be. The anticipation to him was magical. The New York Times later did a investigation and found the magic store and found that the mystery box that the magic store was using was actually their way of pawning off shitty items.
Yeah, that weren't selling.
That weren't selling.
It's a grab bag box. A lot of stores do them.
It's the perfect extension of the metaphor, because that's essentially what the mystery box became for people like Abrams and other people, is like they didn't have a good answer, so they put it in the mystery box, and then it was like, yeah, but it's the anticipation, and then they wouldn't, most of the time they wouldn't actually even answer the questions. Right.
The derogatory mystery box term is anticipation without payoff.
Right. So Mike Flanagan doesn't do mystery box. He just does mystery.
He does mystery. Yeah. It's anticipation. We want to see what's going to happen. We know we're going to see it because the story is building towards it.
Exactly. And then he answers it in a satisfying
reveals
way.
It. He releases the tension in the final episode.
Yeah. I forget what brought us to this. We were talking about the episodes. Oh, yeah, the black cat, the most relatable favorite one.
Yeah, and actually, I think Leo Raukoli is the most likable of the Ushers, outside of Lenore, the granddaughter, who is purely good.
Yeah, but
on purpose.
Black Cat wasn't necessarily my favorite, but it was the most relatable, because it's like, yes, someday I will die chasing my black cat around my apartment. That just feels like what's going to happen. Yeah,
it's destiny.
Yeah, but that was fun. I love that the cat had to be CGI in a lot of shots, because it's like just getting a cat to walk on screen is a problem. And so it's just funny when the cat's CGI'd. I'm like, I know why that's CGI.
I imagine it's probably just easier. I mean, we love CGI animals here.
We do, because it's better on the animal, but also for a cat, I'm imagining him being like, so I want the cat to walk on his body and hit this mark. Can he do that? And the trainer being like, yeah, do you have like 3 days? And it's like, no, we don't. And it's like, all right. Because like, I think using a cat is just like being like, just waiting for something to naturally happen, basically.
Essentially, yeah. It's like trying to train a spider.
Yeah. Rue Morgue was a lot of fun. The fucking part where she's like gets on the table like a monkey is just like, she's a monkey. I get it, because he's doing this for all of it, but I really wanted that monkey to have a straight razor. I don't care if they had to like sweatily add it.
Should have had a razor, yeah.
But this was an example where
that
Death
monkey
is like,
a knife.
Right. I love that even Death for this, because this is fuck, I forgot this actress's name. She's married to Flanagan. Oh, she's terrific.
Kate Siegel.
Yeah. I love that even Death is like, you can turn back. This is going to be real messed up for you. like Death is just like this. You don't deserve this.
She does that to a few people. Like she does it to Prospero in the Red Death one, where he's gonna we're gonna have a fuck party and we're gonna use all these old sprinklers to dump old water on us so that we can all be wet for the sex party. And she is like, you can. He's really doing it to try to fuck Henry Thomas's wife, just because he hates him, because Henry Thomas treats him like shit. So Death does you could stop. You could stop at any time. You could just go home.
Right.
And maybe just lay down peacefully in your sleep.
Yeah, exactly. But all right. Yeah, Death is just like, because that's the thing. That character is kind of, it's like he's too young to be completely evil. You know what I mean?
Right. He's conceited and self-absorbed, but he's a 22-year-old millionaire.
Exactly.
And he just we learned that Roderick was just having kids left and right because he didn't give a fig about the death bargain of your entire bloodline will die. He's
wild fucking detail, yeah.
Yeah, and then meanwhile his sister, who the entire movie is presented as this stone cold fucking just chop your head off if you cross. She's the real mastermind behind the Ushers. It's just because she's a woman, she wasn't able to actually run the company, so she had to have her brother do it. So they're a brother and sister team. But she's always been the more ferocious one. So it's when the reveal is that Roderick took the deal instantly and she was uncertain about it. And then we learn that Roderick didn't bother not having kids. She immediately got like an IUD, she says, and never had children.
Yeah, because she knew. Yeah,
she knew.
Yeah, that's a great detail.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rue Morgue was fun, but I wanted that monkey to have a razor. I think my two favorite is Red Death, because
Red Death is
I don't know about you.
gnarly.
I saw that one come in a mile away because they keep doing shots showing the sprinklers, and I was like, those sprinklers are gonna fucking kill him.
Well, also, I think Roderick, you hear him mention that the sprinklers are full of chemicals.
Again, I think part of the fun was he wanted the audience to be a little bit ahead of the characters.
You're supposed to have dramatic irony because we get to see a lot of these from Death's perspective, literally.
That's what it is. Is I think Death is the protagonist who are watching the show.
Essentially, her or Augie, the detective.
Yeah,
the insurance detective, essentially. I think he starts out as an insurance detective.
Insurance detective, yeah.
Well, he starts out working as an insurance claims investigator, and he teams up with Roderick to like try to take down, because he thinks they're going to take down the company, but Roderick screws him over.
Yeah, that's great, because you can tell like he really fucking hates this guy
because he's an evil guy.
And then you learn why, and you're like, oh
right.
yeah.
You get to like at first you just feel like maybe this guy's like just like a little prickly because Roderick burned him so many years ago, and for most of the series you kind of are fooled into thinking of Roderick as almost a roguish character. It's like, well, yeah, he's done evil things, but you get the sense that he is deep down a good man, and he lost his way, and maybe he could find his way back there and all this other stuff. But then like his, the cost he paid for having kids is the same as when we learn at the end where he tells Augie, he says, you want to know the actual ultimate confession, or the ultimate secret is that I always knew that we weren't helping people with our drugs. I always knew that my legacy and my billions was being built atop a stack of corpses that reaches to the heavens, and I don't care. But anyway, yeah, I think it would be either her or Augie, who's the detective that we're sort of following.
For sure.
That he's speaking to in the bookend episode.
Yes. Yeah, it's funny. I like that he does a couple of times where like the story stops and he's like, are you going to get to anything here? Because it is like, I mean, that's a lot of Mike Flanagan, which is like the narrative device is let's all listen to this person tell a story for like 7 hours. And that's just funny for me. The one though that I thought they did, because I was like, how are they going to do this, is fucking the Raven. I really enjoyed how he did the Raven because you right away, the granddaughter's named Lenore, and you're like, well, I know where this is going. And
it's one of those, again, it was one of those things where she's so young and she's such a good person that you're like, well, surely she'll be, nope, she will not be spared.
No,
the terms of the deal were clear.
I was watching with Hannah, and Hannah was like, I wonder if Lenore will get spared. And I was like, it's the Raven. Like, the whole point of the Raven is an innocent person is dead. As far as we know, we don't really know if
you don't know
innocent,
anything about her.
But it's
just,
about lamenting the death.
He loved her very much, and now she's gone.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, she's dead meat. And I loved the concept of like, because in the Raven, it's like implied that it's probably his wife, and doing granddaughter was like, oh, that's a really good idea. And doing like, it's so different than the others because it's about grief as opposed to being about like there's a creepy element to the Raven, but it's mostly about
grief. And it's the terror of what it brings, like your terror of the finality that it is sort of, so it's less about like some of the other stories like Cask of Amontillado, or well, less that one, but like Telltale Heart, which is about guilt. And like we were saying, so many of the other episodes had been about the guilt, and then in this one, it still is guilt in a way, because he knows he's the one that got Lenore killed.
Right.
It still is guilt, but there's the grief is mixed in there too, which is absent from most of the other ones. Yeah,
it is. And then I liked how the Raven is kind of throughout, and the Raven represents death, right? She death is sort of the Raven.
She gives her name as Verna, which is an anagram, a raven.
You're right. But then also they do the app idea, which is that Lenore's like consciousness has been uploaded to this AI, and the AI kind of also represents, because isn't the AI saying Nevermore?
The
Did I
AI
get
is
that right?
endlessly repeating Nevermore to him. It's texting him. Yeah.
Which is perfect because the Raven and the AI like this mindless thing just repeating the same thing. And like that, it wasn't surprising, but at the beginning he keeps getting the dings from his granddaughter. And it was just like a good little setup, is that he just keeps getting this text saying Nevermore over and over again. That's driving him nuts. Just like a real creative and neat interpretation of the Raven. Like, I really like that he knew that he had to go kind of out there with the interpretations, and he tried to do it in a very fun way.
That was a lot of the fun of watching the show, was seeing how he was going to do it.
Yeah, how was he going to do it, and how creative and weird can he get? And he knew he had to, he couldn't do it one-to-one. He couldn't try to get everything there, but I felt like he got the vibe of every single one.
Yeah.
The one I still think, the Pit and the Pendulum, I think that was the hardest one, because I think the vibe of Pit and the Pendulum. Yeah, but I always thought the vibe of Pit and the Pendulum was kind of more about this long, you're trapped in this horrible, he doesn't really have time to do all that. You know, he just sort of.
It is more about a drawn out torture, like.
You could argue that what's happened to his wife is part of that.
It for sure. That's definitely part of the story. Like she's experiencing more of what the character in that story is experiencing.
Yeah, I think so. Like that's
or she's paralyzed and being tormented by a madman, which is what is happening to the character in the story.
Right. Yeah, so I guess it does work after all. It works fine.
I did like seeing, because they had the repeated motifs, like you said, of the swinging pendulums, like the kitty cat tail, and then also just the pendulum on the grandfather clock, and then the swinging wrecking ball. So you're like, where is it gonna fucking come from?
Yeah. It's like Final Destination.
Yeah, I know it's gonna come from somewhere. I can't even imagine how a fucking pendulum is gonna get into this, and then you see how it happens. You're like, all right, fair play.
Right. Okay. It is very Final Destination, where it's like the pendulum felt sweaty, but it's also death is doing this on purpose the way they would in Final Destination. So it's like, no death can be too sweaty because death is specifically setting these freak accidents up.
Mm-hmm. She goes on the radio using Henry Thomas's voice like fucking Predator.
Right.
Or the Terminator.
It's very funny because like there's a few that's like with the fucking acid, it's like that she didn't have to really do much there. There's certain levels of involvement that's funny, where it's like, I guess you could say maybe that she was setting this thing in motion way earlier in advance.
Since the deal was inked, probably.
Yeah, that's true.
Although, well, you never know,
but like,
because she
it
did
still
the whole,
takes the characters having to do the stuff. Yeah. It's like she has to shove it in the right direction a little bit to certain extents. Like the fucking gold bug, it's just like she's just like committing the murder. Like Death is just doing the murder in that one. It feels like
more or less, yeah. So
Death has to make it look a little bit like an accident, but
Black Cat too. It was essentially the same thing. She baits her using her reflection in a mirror, and then in the Black Cat she baits him using the cat.
It would be so funny if one of them just keeps avoiding it, so she just walks up and shoots her.
I mean, that's
like,
kind of what she does to Lenore.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Well, yeah, I think the idea with Lenore is, Lenore is the only one in the family who maybe she'd be an asshole someday, but she's not an asshole now. She's young. And so she basically sits down with her and she's like, listen, I'm not happy about this either, but
that's another one
you're
of
going to
my
have to die.
Another one of my favorite scenes. So she's like,
so good.
So let me tell you a story. And then she tells her basically all of the good things that her mom goes on to do. And all of her mom starts a foundation in her name, and all of the people that she ends up helping snowballs into hundreds, then thousands, then millions, and then they can't even count. And then she ties it all back to it. And then you did that when you saved your mom from your dad. You broke in there and you got your mom to the hospital. So you saved all these people, and I wanted you to know that. And then she kills her. She does the touch of death.
Enjoy hell. Just sends her straight to hell.
Enjoy nothingness.
Yeah.
Riding motorcycles with meatloaf across a lake of fire.
Yeah, I like how, because that's one of the interesting things. Mike Flanagan has two versions of how he talks about death. He talks about death from one side of it and the other, meaning that he does ones about ghosts, about like his ideas of what it means to be dead, and they're almost like sci-fi, like House of Usher, or not House of Usher. That's the one we're reviewing. Bly Manor feels like a sci-fi premise of how death works, of like slowly losing your identity, being locked in these patterns. It sort of reminds me of The Shining, where The Shining's about how it's like people stuck in these memories, you know? Mm-hmm. They're not even ghosts, they're echoes of an event. And I love that idea that death is like this, more of a sci-fi or like an abstract concept. So he loves playing with those ideas, right? And then like you watch Haunting of Hill House, it's way more traditional. It's just like, yeah, you're just a ghost. You're just a ghost. And so he does all these variations. And then Midnight Mass is about our fear of death and how religion plays into it, you know, wanting to sort of tell ourselves these stories that it's all going to be okay. And how do we face death? And this is more on that line where it's like, he's not saying like, this is what happens after death. Like, that's a different system. This is just death. The concept of death. And like death is treated nature. Kind of sad here because it feels like even death doesn't know what happens. That's like the impression you get from death, is like she's not in charge of that. She's just in charge of ending lives.
It seems
not what happens afterwards.
It seems right, and it seems she implies that. Well, it doesn't seem. She implies that this, so it seems that this is the case, is what I meant to say. That their lives could have gone one of two directions. Like they could have broke good or broke bad. Because she does mention a few times, in the other life, you were this. Like she says to Henry Thomas, she says, in the other life, you were a dentist.
Right, and I'm sure some of them didn't even exist.
Probably.
Because, the idea is like, if he had not made the deal, they would have been completely different people. And Henry Thomas is, of course, the one was alive when he made the deal. So
he had already had Tammy and Frederick, I think is his name.
She seems to have a knowledge of time and like she lords over the world of the mortals, basically. But like the way she talks, like how sad she is about killing that girl, implies like maybe she's not sure what happens after this. Which is interesting to me, or she knows it's nothingness, or, I just really like that idea. I like the idea of death sort of not seeming like they know what death really means to people.
As much as his works are sort of preoccupied with death and all the different myriad ways in which we deal with it and face it and coexist with it, he never suggests or takes away from the preciousness of life. So I think he's erring on the side of not. I don't know. Maybe that was the wrong thought. An observation.
It's part of what Gothic horror is, which is really interesting. Is that horror is about fear of death? Ultimately, obviously it's about fear of other things, but it's about fear.
Yeah.
And death is, of course, the thing we keep going back to.
The root of most fears, if you dial it all back,
Exactly. Like it all, the more you simplify any fear,
it's just like, ultimately I'm afraid I might die.
Yeah. Or I'm afraid that of the end, of nothingness, or of I'll never do the thing.
I'm afraid of not existing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Flanagan really hones in on that. And that doesn't mean he doesn't talk about other things. Like we said, this is kind of about generations sacrificing the younger people. Like he'll have stuff on top of it, but it's always kind of related to death. And I just love that he always tackles it from these different directions, and he knows to limit that and still make death mysterious. Even when it's there's some versions of this where a character dies and then they're just a ghost and they're like, hey, I'm a ghost, it's fine. He's done versions of that. And so, but it's the thing of the more you make death not mysterious and not that, the less scary it can be. So I think Haunting of Hill House, one of the key things he does is he makes death less and less scary as it progresses. is a big part of it. But death is still, he shows death from the perspective of the people dying. And it's this abstract that's really kind of terrifying still, of like locked into their own weird hells. Obviously, Two Storms is probably one of the best fucking hours of television.
Yeah,
that
that's
he's
a great
created.
episode.
And it shows death as being like, it's not scary, it's sad. And like that's such a good way of doing it. Like he loves the idea of death being tragic and like sad. To be dead is like a sad story. And Bly Manor also does that. Like it's these tragic stories. So he manages to make death like to like explore what death is more than you'd think, right? He loves showing the perspective of the dead. The Bly Manor has that
But he
whole
never-
episode where she's just in a room and that's it. That's her death.
He doesn't really glamorize it.
He doesn't glamorize it, and he still makes it feel terrifying, while also giving you this weird sense of like security. And I noticed that the ones that he wants you to feel better about death in the most are the ones where he doesn't show that side. Midnight Mass doesn't show here's what happens when you die. You know,
It does briefly. It does
little
with Kate,
briefly.
with Kate Siegel's character in the end,
yeah. And there's
and with Riley
the boat.
when he bursts
The
into
boat.
flame. Yeah,
which is a very funny scene. But like he only
is,
shows
yeah.
a taste of it, just a little taste. And so like I think that's like this is even less of that, where it's like death is it's a closed door. It's the mystery box that it stays a mystery. The point of this is to not show any of that.
yeah.
And I think that's interesting. I think it's interesting to look at his stuff and think of how does he handle the veil of death, and he sort of knows how to handle it depending on the story, which is really cool to me.
Yeah, it changes.
It changes depending on what the story needs to be.
Exactly.
And it's really cool to watch all of Mike Flanagan's stuff in that perspective of like, how is he looking at death in this one?
Yeah, man, I love the decision to make her a moral character. Like I said, great choice, great performance. I don't have too much else to talk about.
No, it's just another banger from Mike Flanagan.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, I like all his stuff. Everything I've seen of his.
Yeah.
The movies included, I've liked to some extent. Some I like more than others, but that's just how humans work.
Yeah, even
Humans liking stuff.
even his first movie, his Kickstarted movie, is pretty legit.
Yeah. All of his stuff is great. Oculus, man.
Yeah,
I
Oculus
enjoyed
is
the
sweet.
shit out of Oculus.
That's a good one.
Oh, I haven't seen Before I Wake. I need to watch that.
Let's do it. And but I think that's a so, Dave.
Yeah,
I think we may have fulfilled the terms of the deal.
It's a big old turgid sode. So thanks for listening, everybody. Speaking of turgid, enjoy your Thanksgiving, or I hope you enjoyed your Thanksgiving. I think this comes out post Thanksgiving. When's Thanksgiving? You know what?
Thursday.
It doesn't matter.
Thanksgiving Day.
Listen, we have a Patreon. Patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. GAMEFULLY unemployed. You go in there for $5 a month. You get access to exclusive podcasts. Tom and Jeff Watch Batman. Fox Mulder's Maniacs. Star Trek The Next Futurama. Spiel Boys. We watch movies every Friday night with our patrons. I think we watched Ouija 2 at one point.
We definitely have, yeah.
Yeah. It's fun. We have fun. People love us. We're great.
Yeah, all those things are true. We also have a store. A third thing that is true. Fourth? I don't know. Head over to gamefullyunemployed.com where you can find a link to our Teespring store where we have all kinds of cool original artwork and designs. You can get on t-shirts, mugs, stickers, posters, all sorts of things. So slap your death-dealing raven peepers onto that.
Yeah. Do it. Do it.
Do it.
Don't trust birds.
No, never.
They
Why
could
would
be
you?
dead.
What a bird
They
in
could
your
be dead.
house.
Right. Best case scenario, they're a bird. It's
Which
terrible.
is terrible. Now you have a bird in the house.